Most people think they know Native American history: wars, treaties, reservations. A story of defeat neatly summarized and safely archived. But what if that version is incomplete? What if entire chapters were erased, hidden, or deliberately misunderstood? Beneath the surface lies a different story, one of resilience that never vanished, underground networks of knowledge that survived in whispers and ceremony, and innovations so advanced they were ignored or claimed by others. These are the stories left out of textbooks, the ones buried for centuries. Until now. Chapter 1. The Original Mathematicians and Scientists. Long before European settlers arrived, many Native American societies had developed sophisticated systems of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Their knowledge was not written in textbooks or carved into marble halls. It was embedded in land, memory, pattern, and practice. The Inca civilization used quipu, intricate systems of knotted strings, to record numerical data, census information, trade records, and possibly even historical narratives. Far from simple counting tools, quipu reflected advanced mathematical thinking and information storage, challenging modern assumptions about what writing looks like. Across North America, the Mississippian mound builders engineered vast cities such as Cahokia, designed with remarkable precision. Their earthen mounds aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and celestial events, functioning as astronomical calendars that guided agriculture, ceremony, and governance. These were not accidental constructions. They required careful measurement, planning, and deep knowledge of the sky. Indigenous astronomers tracked stars, planets, and lunar cycles to predict seasons, migrations, and planting times. Engineers shaped landscapes to manage water, prevent flooding, and sustain large populations. Science was not separate from life. It was lived daily, observed patiently, and refined across generations. These were not primitive societies. They were innovators. Yet much of this knowledge was ignored, dismissed, or deliberately minimized because it did not fit European definitions of science. What could not be immediately understood was labeled inferior. But the evidence remains, in the land, in the sky, and in the systems that still astonish researchers today. History did not begin with colonization. It was already advanced. Chapter 2. Hidden Alliances and Resistance. History books often portray Native American tribes as isolated, each fighting alone, overwhelmed by a larger force. But this version of the story leaves out what truly terrified colonial powers: unity. Across vast distances, tribes formed complex alliances built on diplomacy, shared interest, and mutual survival. These alliances were not random or desperate. They were strategic, deliberate, and deeply intelligent. The Iroquois Confederacy stands as one of the most sophisticated political unions in the world. Long before modern democracies, it united multiple nations under a system of shared governance, law, and diplomacy. Decisions required consensus. Power was balanced. Peace was maintained not through force, but through negotiation. Beyond formal confederacies, indigenous communities maintained hidden networks of communication. Messengers, oral codes, symbols, and trusted intermediaries carried information across forests, rivers, and plains. Warnings about troop movements, broken treaties, and encroaching settlements traveled faster than colonizers realized. Resistance did not always mean open battle. It meant delaying, redirecting, negotiating, misleading, and surviving. Some alliances negotiated strategically to buy time. Others coordinated movement, shelter, and supply routes beyond colonial control. Native people were not just fighters. They were diplomats, strategists, negotiators. What colonizers called disorder was often coordinated resistance, invisible by design. And it worked far longer than history admits. Chapter 3. Women who shaped nations. Mainstream history often frames leadership as male and power as force. But in many Native American societies, the foundation of power looked very different, and it was often held by women. Native women were not confined to the margins of society. They were leaders, decision-makers, healers, and guardians of the land. In matrilineal nations such as the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois Confederacy, lineage, inheritance, and political authority flowed through women. Clan mothers selected chiefs, advised councils, and had the power to remove leaders who failed their people. Women controlled food systems and trade, managing agriculture, storage, and distribution, the true backbone of economic stability. Whoever controlled food controlled survival, and Native women understood this deeply. Their stewardship ensured not only abundance, but balance. They were also keepers of medicine and ceremony. Through generations of knowledge, women preserved healing practices, birth traditions, and spiritual rituals that sustained communities through war, displacement, and loss. This knowledge was passed quietly, often in secret, when colonial forces tried to erase it. Colonization deliberately targeted this power. European systems imposed patriarchal laws that stripped women of authority, land rights, and political voice. The erasure was not accidental, it was strategic. Yet leadership did not disappear. It adapted. Centuries later, figures like Wilma Mankiller, the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation in modern times, emerged not as exceptions, but as continuations. Her leadership reflected ancient principles: community-driven governance, consensus, and service over domination. Native women did not merely survive history. They shaped it, and they are still shaping it. What was erased is now being remembered. Chapter 4: The Lost Languages and Knowledge. When a language disappears, more than words are lost. An entire way of seeing the world goes silent. European colonization did not only seize land, it targeted native languages. Through forced assimilation, boarding schools, and punishment for speaking indigenous tongues, generations were cut off from the words that carried their identity. This was not accidental. Language was power, and silencing it weakened resistance. Native languages held philosophies embedded in grammar itself. Many were verb-based, emphasizing relationships and processes rather than ownership. The land was not something to be owned, it was something lived with. Rivers were not objects, they were living movements. Time was cyclical, not linear. These ideas shaped governance, justice, and how communities related to nature. Within these languages lived environmental intelligence refined over thousands of years. Words described subtle changes in soil, wind, animal behavior, and seasons, knowledge critical for farming, hunting, and medicine. Many traditional remedies were recorded only in spoken language. When words were lost, cures were lost with them. Yet knowledge did not fully vanish. It went underground. Elders whispered stories at night. Songs carried meanings outsiders could not hear. Ceremonial language survived in fragments, waiting for the moment it could breathe again. Today, that moment is arriving. Across Native communities, elders and youth are reviving ancestral languages through immersion schools, digital archives, and community gatherings. Children are once again learning the words their ancestors were forbidden to speak. With those words comes forgotten knowledge, medicines rediscovered, agricultural practices restored, governance models remembered. This revival is not nostalgia, it is survival. As the modern world faces ecological collapse and social disconnection, the wisdom stored in these languages offers guidance on sustainability, community, and balance. The languages were wounded, but they were not killed. They are speaking again. Closing reflection. Perhaps Native American history was never truly lost. Perhaps it was deliberately hidden, pushed aside, silenced, rewritten. Yet despite centuries of erasure, the stories endured. They survived in whispered teachings, in ceremonies held out of sight, in languages spoken softly so they would not disappear. What could not be written was remembered. What could not be taught openly was passed down carefully. Native peoples are not defined by what was taken from them. They are defined by what they protected. They preserved knowledge when it was forbidden. They adapted when survival demanded change. They carried wisdom forward so future generations could find it again. Today, as these stories resurface, they challenge us to rethink history itself, not as a single narrative written by the powerful, but as a living truth shaped by resilience. This is not just about correcting the past. It is about listening now. Because true history is not frozen in time. It breathes, it teaches, it guides, and the wisdom carried by Indigenous peoples, rooted in balance, community, and respect for life, may be exactly what the modern world needs to remember. Welcome to Mode Hub Tales.